If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another album review for you guys. And today I'm talking about a new band I had not heard of until now. I am talking about the latest offering from one-man death metal band Alchemy of Flesh with By Will Alone. This also comes out on November 17th, this time on Redefining Darkness Records, which anytime I see Redefining Darkness coming out with stuff, I'm gonna check it out because that's a pretty damn cool label, local here to Ohio. But, so Alchemy of Flesh, yeah, like I said, this is a one-man death metal band done by one Tim Rowland, and this is based out of Athens, Georgia, this project, and Tim's doing everything himself. Vocals, instruments, production, mix, all that stuff. And, well, whenever I first heard about this album when going through the metal archives, I saw that the project was compared to Morbid Angel, and I thought, well, I love Morbid Angel, I love Florida death metal, let's hear what this sounds like, and holy shit, Tim does a hell of a job at paying homage almost to that classic early 90s Florida death metal sound. We kick things off with Meteor Hammer, which immediately right away, Morbid Angel worship comes right at you with those nasty, sinister tremolo riffs, triplet chugging, gross breakdowns, and atmospheric melodies. And pretty much that's kind of a common thing all throughout this album, is all these nasty tremolo riffs, lots of great triplet chugging, and some really cool breakdowns when they do appear, and does get melodic at times, but the melodies in which how they are different sometimes from song to song. Like the following track, The Godhead of Self, that one has some more dissonant melodies, and dissonance does become more common as the album goes on. But Other Eden starts right away with nasty triplet chugs and riffs, but instead of sounding more like Morbid Angel, to me I thought they sounded closer to like Blood Red Throne to some extent. And also, this album does get thrashy, like it does kind of go into like that early Morbid Angel vibe when it comes down to the more thrashy death side. But I also got some nods to bands like Vader, especially on The Godhead of Self, where it just gets really thrashy, just out of nowhere, just to pummel you. Reminded me a lot of like Vader's Litany or something along those lines. Earth Dragon Totality, again, more of that thrashy death sound, but this also sounds a lot like classic Florida death metal, but also some Hate Eternal vibes. Like, there are some moments of Hate Eternal that kind of come up here and there on this album, and some of these, like, dissonant tremolos that you get from time to time throughout. The Labyrinthine Fortress, this one was a little bit different. This one, not so much about speed, this was mostly about chug and groove. Dare I say, a little bit like Gojira, because there's even some, like, prog nods that come up here with, like, odd time shifts within the groove, and even that dissonant breakdown that comes in. Similar to Gojira, but also kind of reminds me of something Immolation probably would have done. Erratic Existence, nasty riff to open things up before it gets back to like these thrashy tremolo riffs, grooves, more of those Morbid Angel vibes coming up here and there, more dissonant melodies up here. Unmaker, the tremolo riff that opens up this track definitely has some Hate Eternal moments that come up, which I love me some Hate Eternal, but still retaining more of that, like, again, that thrashy death goodness with these crazy fast blast beats. The intensity I felt on this track was kind of amplified times 5. And there's even some nods to, like, I would even go as far as to say Malevolent Creation on this track. Oh god, I'm gonna try my best to pronounce this. Immeration? There we go. Immeration. almost sounds like immolation whenever I say it, but this song does have some immolation nods with the dissonance and the chugs, and even the melodies kind of have those like touches of evil to it. And then the closing track, Origin of Suffering, pretty much encompasses everything that this album's all about. You get your dissonance, you get your nasty tremolo riffs, you get triplet chugs, crawling riffs even, and there's even like this I almost want to say a Black Sabbath swing, but it's done in a nasty Florida death metal way, like this nice, nasty triplet swing towards the end. And another thing I forgot to mention too, the crawling riffs that you get from time to time, especially on Origin of Suffering, but also on Earth Dragon Totality. It's these crawling riffs just crawl up your arm and is about ready to eat out of the palm of your fucking hand. That's pretty much like how I get from the vibes I get from these crawling riffs that come up. So really musically, while it is a bit formulaic, like it's all relying about those nasty tremolo riffs and triplet chugs, it's a formula that I like because I love old school death metal. I love Florida death metal as a whole. Now really the only complaint that I could find about this album, and it's kind of a big one, the mix on the snare drum was super thin. Like, there are times where you can barely hear the snare drum, especially whenever it gets into these, like, slower sections that come up here and there, especially in the Godhead of Self, where he slows the tempo down with these dissonant melodies, but unfortunately, you can barely hear the snare drum. Really kind of across the board. Granted, there are times when the snare does sound a little more present, mostly in the blast beat sections, but in the thrash sections or the groovy sections, you can barely hear the snare, and that is a huge problem with this album. I feel like if Tim could have upped the mix on the snare to where the snare was a little more present, I would have given this a bit of a higher score. I mean, musically, this album's pretty musically sound for what Tim was going for, but the big issue, the mix of that snare drum is so thin, it's unfortunate. But overall, this was still a really good album. I'm going to give this 8.5 out of 10. I thought this was really good. Like I said, it's quite musically sound. Even the bands that Tim is almost paying homage to are killer bands, and he's just doing it in his own way. So yeah, if only the snare was better sounding, I probably would have given this a higher score, but for what it is, it's a really good album. But of course, that's all just my opinion. What did you guys think of By Will Alone by Alchemy of Flesh? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.